There's a fascinating conference going on in Seattle at the moment. It's called CROI, talk about an ugly acronym, CROI, Conference on Retroviruses and Opportunistic Infections, quite a mouthful. And it's an important conference on infectious disease. We haven't heard much about it because, of course, everything is focused on the cacophony of absurdity in the White House. But in fact, this conference has yielded at least 3 important studies. First of all, a study on HIV and AIDS in Uganda, in the community of Rakai, which was ground zero for the pandemic when it began. And Rakai, when I visited it several years ago, was a kind of graveyard of death and despair. And now suddenly Rakai is coming back. The communities around it are feeling optimistic and hopeful. Why? For 3 reasons. First, antiretroviral treatment has been absorbed by the majority of people who are living with the virus. Second, male circumcision, which reduces transmission. And the levels of male circumcision have leaped. They were roughly 15% of the adult population back in 2000, and they're now nearly 60%. And third, an intensive effort at school with young girls to persuade them to delay sexual debut. So the combination of those 3 factors has allowed the prevalence rate to plummet by more than 1/3 and a sense of optimism to prevail. The second study, also on HIV and AIDS, encompassed Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi, and showed again a significant decline in the virus. And what has been indicated there is that the viral load for the people who are living with the virus has dropped by some 90%. So the viral load is virtually undetectable, which means if you have unprotected sex, you're unlikely to transmit the virus. And that demonstrates why the prevalence rate has come down. So Zambia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe are feeling good about it. Of course, there's a huge amount yet to be done. 20 million people have not yet been treated, but at least there are signs of progress. The third study was on tuberculosis, and tuberculosis, you will know, is the single greatest killer of people living with AIDS. And tuberculosis has developed some resistant strains, resistant to the antibiotic drugs that used to be available. So you have multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis and extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis, and it can always result in a death warrant, even if you're able somehow to curtail it along the way. Well, we haven't had new drugs for 40 or 50 years until very recently, when 2 new drugs, one of them called bedaquiline, the second called delaminid, again a mouthful, came on the market. And a recent study in South Africa showed an astonishing success rate when they were applied to a limited number of people, these people having extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis, which up until now has virtually been beyond treatment. It's very exciting. If it were spread across the world, it could revolutionize the treatment for tuberculosis and the outcomes. So obviously, I'm in a pretty good frame of mind given the results of this conference. Would that it not all subside in this whirlpool of moronic imbecility in Washington. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.